Okay. Hi, Jesse. This is just a quick little thing. The slideshow is on my laptop, so I'm going to be changing the slides from here because it wasn't working on my TV. And so if I'm going like that to interrupt the conversation, I'm sorry, but that's just what we'll have to work with for right now. So I'm going to start my talk now. Hi, everyone. My name is Shania. I'm here with Jack.org to talk to you guys today about mental health. But before we deep dive into any of that, I want you guys to get to know me better as a human person and just as someone who's going to spend the next 45 minutes with you. So, we're going to play a game I like to call Two Truths and One Lie. What I'm going to do is tell you guys three statements, and you're going to guess which one of those statements is a lie. Okay, so number one, I'm currently training one of my dogs to dog sled. Number two, I like pineapples on pizza. And number three, I'm allergic to apple skins. Okay, give you a second to let that simmer. So, I want you guys to stomp your feet if you think that the statement I'm going to say is the lie. Okay, so who thinks that I'm not trying to train one of my dogs to dog sled? Okay, just a few. Number two, who thinks that I like pineapples on pizza? Okay, about the same. That's okay. And number three, who thinks that I'm allergic to apple skins? Okay, a lot more stomps there. So, I hate to say it. Actually, I don't even hate to say it. I don't like pineapples on pizza. I'm one of those people that thinks fruit should not belong on pizza. And that's a controversial opinion, but we will talk about that another time. I am allergic to apple skins, and I am training one of my dogs how to dog sled. And so it's been fun, but we can get at that later. So, now that you guys know me a little bit better, I said that I'm here with Jack.org. Jack.org is a Canadian charity that is focused on youth leadership and mental health. We've grown into a national movement that works with young leaders to end silence around mental health. This is done through talks like this, setting up chapters, and working and having national and regional summits throughout the province and territory. So, now that I've talked to you guys about what Jack.org is, I want to talk to you guys about mental health. There is so much silence and so much stigma around mental health, and that's why I'm here today. And to start it off, I want to show you guys this video that talks about silence. Video. Okay, so that video gives us a lot of realism around what mental health is currently like in Canada. There's so much silence and so much stigma, it's impacting all of the people in Canada. So, 5 in 5 of us have mental health, but only 1 in 5 of us will struggle with their mental health throughout any given year. And of that 1 in 5, only a quarter will receive the help that they need. Currently, suicide is the #1 health-related cause of death for young people in Canada. And in Ontario, more than 12,000 children and youth are waiting to access mental health services. And since 2007, there's been a 67% increase in hospitalizations for children and youth seeking treatment. These statistics are really staggering, in my opinion, and it shows that we still have so much more growth to do around mental health. And that's why I'm here today, to give you guys a little bit more awareness around what mental health means. So, I've said the word mental health a lot. Can anyone tell me what mental health means, or what it is? Okay, it's like physical health, great. It's more of our mind, that's perfect. So we're going to talk about more what mental health is later, but do you guys know how you can be there for yourselves or for others when they're struggling with their mental health? Okay, say that you care, that's great. It's a bit harder of a question, but I have one more for you. Do you know how to take action on mental health to change the stigma? That's a hard question, probably the hardest of those three. Throughout this presentation, I'm going to tell you guys a little bit of tips and tricks that you can do, and so you guys will be able to know how to answer all of these questions. But before we get into that, I want to give a big thank you to the people in the room. Thank you guys for coming today. I super appreciate it. I'd also like to thank Mr. Truck in the back. He was the person that organized this Jack Talk. He's been super great, so let's give Mr. Truck a little bit of a clap. Yay, Mr. Truck! Okay, I also want to point out Mrs. Jones in the room. Mrs. Jones is your high school mental health counselor, and if at any point during this conversation it's starting to get a little bit too much, she is a great person that you can access. We like to use a thumbs up, thumbs down rule when we're doing our talks. If you're just leaving to go to the bathroom or to get some water or do a walk, just give Mrs. Jones a thumbs up so that she knows you're okay. But if you feel like some of this conversation is making you feel a little bit down, or you just need to get some space, give her a thumbs down and she'll know that she needs to follow you out to make sure that you're okay. And if you don't give her a thumbs up or a thumbs down, she's just going to follow you out anyways. So just give her one of those to make it easier. I do have to apologize in advance. I'm currently fighting a cough, so I will periodically have to drink my tea and my water throughout this. I'm super sorry. I won't cough on any of you, I promise. Okay, so when I was younger, we didn't have lots of people come and talk to us about mental health. It was barely talked about when I was in high school. And because of that, I didn't know how to cope with my own mental health. And so I didn't really know how to talk about it. And that continued on to when I went to university. And because no one talked about it, I didn't know how to take care of myself when I started school. When I was going into my second year of nursing, I just finished this awesome summer job at the hospital. I was finally going into the nursing practicum parts of my education, and I was always really on top of my stuff. So I felt like I was going to go into a great year. And then as the semester progressed, I wasn't doing that well. I wasn't sleeping very well at night, and I was super tired during the day. It was starting to impact my school performance, and I wasn't participating as much. And it really started to impact my relationship with my friends and family because I was isolating myself and because I was super irritable and cranky all the time. And my spouse would point me out to this. I lived with my boyfriend, and he would come home and notice that I was asleep or that I wasn't feeling that well, and it would be like 7 o'clock at night. And so he would say, Shania, you're not acting the same. I feel like I don't really recognize you anymore. What's going on? And I wouldn't ever tell him anything. I would always just say, I don't know, I'm not feeling that great, or school's just really busy and I just feel like I'm tired. And that's all I would say. And I should have said more, but I didn't, because I was worried that he would think that I was weak and that he wouldn't want to be with me anymore. And I thought the same thing about my friends and family, that because I always looked like I was on top of my stuff, they would think that I was a different person and that I wasn't good enough. So I didn't say anything and I didn't reach out for help. But as my semester progressed, it really started to impact my clinical practice, and I ended up fainting on one of my practice experiences. And it wasn't a turnaround moment completely. It did make me realize, though, that I wasn't taking care of myself, and that because of that, it was really starting to impact important parts of my life. And so it took a few weeks before I actually went out to seek help, but I started talking to my spouse and my friends more openly about my mental health and told them that I was struggling with it. And with their support and with their help, I finally went out and reached for help. And I called my family doctor and I said that I need to come in because I'm not doing that great with my mental health. And it was super hard to do because I was feeling like I was going to be perceived as weak. But as soon as I went into that office with how open the environment was and how much I felt like I was supported, I knew I had made the right decision. And so if I hadn't have done that, it could have been completely different. And because no one talked about mental health when I was in high school, my story could have been different. But because of my mental health wellness journey, I am more self aware of myself and understand my mental health illness so much better and have improved my life a lot more because of that. And so that's just my little story. Thank you. Thank you for the little claps. It makes me feel very, very nice. I'm just going to have a quick sip of tea. So, I've mentioned mental health a lot, and I asked you guys to kind of define it, and you gave me some really good points. But we define mental health as our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And oftentimes, people like to think that mental health and mental illness go together, and that they're the same thing. But they are different. But mental health is a super big, important piece of this conversation. Mental health or mental illness is defined as a cluster of symptoms that affect our mental health. And it's important to know that with proper diagnosis and treatment, recovery is possible when someone is diagnosed with a mental illness. And they are different things, but they do go together similarly. And it's important to know that there are many factors that impact our mental health. And when we're in moments of distress or when we feel like we're struggling, there are so many things that impact it. One thing that impacts it is our biology and genetics. That's our DNA, the things that get passed down from our parents through our biology, and that impacts our brain chemistry and how our body functions. There's also our individual environment, the environment that we grew up in, where we currently live, any kind of experiences you've had as a child. There's also culture. In our culture right now, there's stigma around mental health. And because of that stigma, people are not reaching out for help when they need it. And that's why we're here today talking about it, so we can change the culture around mental health and reduce the stigma and the silence around mental health so people can talk about it. Lastly, we have societies and structures. Here in the Northwest Territories, we have a lot of our main services here in the capital in Yellowknife. But for people that are in Delaunay or Flitslake, they don't have those services as readily available, and it can be hard for them to access services. As well, in society, people experience all sorts of discrimination. There's ableism, racism, homophobia, and those can be huge barriers to going to reach out for help. So all of these impact our mental health, and they all have different impacts on it, and it's all different for every single person. And it's super important to know about that. But because we're here today, mental health is being talked about more and more in an educated and safe way. And that's what we want to talk about during this presentation. It's how to talk about mental health in a safe way and make sure that we're educating people. So, I've talked about mental health a lot. And I've mentioned a few things like being struggling or when you're healthy. So we have a spectrum. And so on the mental health spectrum, we have being healthy, which is at the top, down to crisis. So when we look at being healthy, that's where we're at normally. And underneath healthy is stressed. And that's a normal thing. So sorry. Being stressed is normal. It could be like, I have a huge math test on Friday, and I'm really worried about it, and I'm nervous, and I need to study a lot. And that's normal. But with proper self-care and social supports, those can be adjusted, and we can come back up to healthy. But underneath stress, we have struggling. And that's where we notice it's starting to have more of a toll on our life. And that's when our community supports come in, and those are super important. And lastly, we have crisis, which is defined as a risk of imminent harm to a person. And when we have someone in a crisis, we need to access emergency services right away. It's the most important part about crisis. So, we also have mental illness on the spectrum. Because we have talked about mental illness, we have said that it's a separate part of the conversation, but they go together. So we have a mental illness spectrum, which ranges from having no diagnosable mental illness to having severe mental illness. And so the way that I may experience my anxiety can be totally different from how someone else experiences their anxiety. And it can all fluctuate along this spectrum. And of course, because they're separate but together, we have a dual spectrum. So, like our mental health spectrum, we range from optimal health down to poor health. And with our mental illness spectrum, it's from no diagnosable mental illness to severe mental illness. When we put them together, we can have all sorts of things. For someone that is at optimal health and has no diagnosable mental illness, they can be flourishing in their life and be healthy. But at the bottom of that, we have poor health and no mental illness. And that could be someone who is struggling with their mental health and struggling to cope with the loss of a loved one. And that's normal because when we experience things like that, it can fluctuate our mental health. But just because we're feeling sad or down doesn't mean that we have a mental illness. When we go to the other side, though, where there's a diagnosed mental illness, at the top you can have optimal health and still live with a mental illness by having proper self-care and social supports. But at the bottom of that, we have poor health. And that could be, per se, someone who is living with OCD and struggling to cope with the symptoms that they are experiencing. So, I know that's a lot. And so I just threw so much information at you guys. So let's stand up, get our energy back up, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna stretch, touch your fingers to the sky, say hello to the nasty clouds in Yellowknife right now and tell them to go away. And then we're gonna reach down to the ground, probably wet from all the rain that we're getting. I can't touch my toes. I'm not that stretchy, but that girl over there is doing great. My goodness. Okay, and we're gonna go back up and do a Shar Pei. I think we can do better, guys. I'm sorry. That wasn't. Shar Pei would be disappointed. Ready? Awesome. Okay, you guys can take a seat. While you guys sit, I'm gonna have one big cup of tea and hope that helps. Okay, awesome. So, on the spectrum, we talked about near the bottom where there's struggle and crisis. And those are perfectly normal things, and those are things that we may experience in our lives. But how do we identify a struggle? We identify a struggle as being intense, long-lasting, and having a big impact on our lives. What do we mean by those things? So, when the feelings are intense and they're more than you can usually handle and you're struggling to cope with them a little bit. The feelings can also be long-lasting. Maybe the feelings have been going on for a few weeks or a few months and you don't know how to deal with it. Lastly, they're having a big impact on your life and you notice it's starting to affect all different areas of your life. But underneath struggle, we had crisis. And like I said earlier, crisis is when there's risk for imminent harm to a person. And it's super, super important to go reach out for emergency services. That's the only thing you need to do in that area. But now that we've identified all these areas of the spectrum, we need to know what we need to do. And there's 5 golden rules that we like to talk about. Okay, but before we get to those 5 golden rules, I want to give you guys some situations that we can talk about to figure out if someone's struggling or in a crisis. So let's say our buddy Rick. Rick passed that math test on Friday and he was like, oh, awesome, I studied so hard for that. I'm gonna go out and have a great time tonight. And Rick goes to a party, drinks a little bit too much, and he ends up in the hospital for the night. Now, I want you guys to pair up with the person next to you and talk about if you think we should be concerned about Rick's mental state. Okay, so what do you guys think? Should we be concerned about Rick? No? Okay, why not? Yeah, it sounds like it was just a one-time thing. Rick got a bit carried away. He was super stoked he passed his math test, but I don't think that'll happen again. But now let's say Rick has been going out all the time. He's partying every weekend. He's starting to become a little bit more angry and violent with your friend group, and he's not going to school as much lately. Now, what do you guys think? Should we be concerned about Rick's mental state? Okay, let's come back together. What do you guys think now? Should we be concerned about Rick? Yes, it sounds like he's starting to have a lot of intense feelings. Okay, and they're becoming long lasting. It looks like they're intense because they're building up. Long lasting, it's been going on for a little bit longer than we said before, and it's starting to have a big impact on his life. Now, I know we all have social media in this room. I have all forms of social media. I'm sure you guys all have snap streaks. But oftentimes a lot of people will post on social media about their feelings and their thoughts because that's what usually social media was created for. So let's say we have a friend, Haley, and Haley's posting on her Facebook every day saying that she's never been attractive and she's never going to be attractive. What do you guys think? Should we be concerned about Haley and her mental state? You guys can pair up with your partners again next to you and discuss for about 30 seconds. Okay, so what do you guys think? Should we be concerned about Haley? Yes? How come? Sounds like, okay, that's fine too. Anyone else? This one's a bit more tricky. Because Haley's posting things like this, we should be concerned. It sounds like this has been a little bit long lasting where maybe she's been posting like this for a while and starting to sound like the feelings are becoming a little bit more intense. But now let's say Haley has posted online saying that she thinks that life isn't worth living and she's thinking about harming herself. What do you guys think about Haley's mental state right now? Okay, so what do you guys think? Yes, we should be worried because she's talking about harming herself. That's perfect. So It sounds like Haley's feelings are becoming intense and that she's risking harm to herself, which means it's going to have a big impact on her. And so we need to connect Haley to emergency services right away, because without that, there is a risk for harm. Okay, so you guys did an awesome job at identifying what a struggle and a crisis is. But like I said earlier, we have 5 golden rules that we like to talk about so we can help people who are struggling. And so the first golden rule is say what you see. And so if you notice something is different with your friend, mention it to them. And also show that you care. Those 2 things put together can be super, super important. You can say, hey, John, I know it sounds like you've been feeling down lately. I care about you. What's going on? Just by acknowledging that something is different and that you're showing that you care can make them feel more welcome and make them feel like they're supported. The next step is hearing them out. Just listen to them. Allow them to vent and share their feelings and their thoughts. And by letting them do that, it'll open up some conversation and let them know that you are a support system. However, while that's happening, number 4, we need to check ourselves. We need to make sure that we are the right person for this job. John may need another support system beyond you. Or you may not feel like you're up to the task to help John and be that super strong support person he needs. And that is okay as well. And lastly, we need to connect them to help. That can be through social supports, that can be community supports, or connecting them to Miss Jones, or even just simply texting them the next day or talking to them and say, hey, how are you feeling today? And going from there. Now, I want you guys to know that you don't have to do all these steps in cyclical order. You don't need to do them exactly this way. It may be different every time you do this. You may end up hearing them out first and then showing that you care. You may end up just connecting them to help right away and then showing them you care and hearing them out after if it's a crisis. So those are the 5 golden rules that we like to use. And I wish that someone had talked to me about ways to help other people when they're struggling. I have this awesome friend who I've been friends with since middle school, earlier than that actually, kindergarten and early childhood. But we got really close again in middle school, and that progressed to high school. And when we graduated high school, we went to different universities, but we still talked all the time. We were in different provinces, so we texted, we Snapchatted, had an awesome Snap streak going for a while, and we would send each other funny memes and stuff like that all the time. And so not much was different except that we just didn't see each other face to face. But as the semester progressed in our first year, I noticed that my friend was kind of being a bit more distant and wasn't texting me as much and always just said, oh, he's busy and he wasn't feeling up to it. And then we didn't really acknowledge it, and I didn't say anything about it because I thought, you know what, we're in different places. Everyone talks about how you can become a little bit further away from your friends. That's fine. That's just life. And so I didn't say anything. But at the end of our first year, we went out for supper together. And he had mentioned that he hadn't been feeling great throughout the whole year. That he felt like he was struggling with his mental health a bit, and he wasn't sure what to do. And of course, my heart broke because I saw my friend here who was saying they were struggling. And I let him talk, and I asked him to talk and share his feelings, and he did. But I approached it more like a nurse. And I interrupted a lot and said, well, you know, you can go to counseling for that, or you can talk to a doctor and start some medication if you're feeling super depressed. And I didn't really let him talk as much as I should have. And because of that, I didn't hear him out. I showed that I cared, but it was really difficult, and I'm sure that it wasn't as helpful as it could have been. And so if I had known these golden rules of just hearing them out, and then I should have checked myself as well to say that, hey, you know what, you're interrupting a lot, to let him talk a bit more. And so if I had seen these golden rules, I probably would have changed that so much more, and it probably would have gone differently. But now I know these golden rules, and I can approach my friends completely differently. Man, guys, that rain is really pouring out there. It's really hard. Those windows are wet. So, like my friend, that was the first time I had reached out. So, I want to go through some scenarios with you guys so you guys can identify some areas that you can work on and also learn how to work with your friends and be there for them. So, let's say this first scenario. Say we have a friend, Rick again. You've noticed that Rick is usually pretty social. Remember, he liked to go out and party and stuff like that. And Rick was usually pretty social, but now he's isolating himself. you guys want to talk to him about his state and make sure that he's okay. So I want you guys to buddy up again and figure out ways that you would talk to Rick to notice to say what you see and to show that you care. I'll give you guys about a minute to talk about that, okay? Okay, so what did you guys say to Rick? Okay? Yeah, so hey Rick, I've noticed you've been not hanging out with the group as much. I care about you. Perfect. That is the prime way to use those first two steps. A simple, hey Rick, I noticed you've been isolating yourself lately and you're not hanging out with the friends as much. I care about you and I want to make sure you're okay. That simple sentence can make Rick feel so much better and let him know that you are a support system there if he needs it. But now let's choose a different person. We have Kaylee. And Kaylee has been a bit angry lately and she's starting to get a little bit more rude towards your friend group. And you approached Haley and said, hey, you know what? When I'm angry and not feeling great, this is what I do. And she lashes out and she gets really upset. Now, what would you guys say to Haley now to check yourself and hear them out? I'll give you guys about a minute to do that as well with your partner. Okay, so what did you guys say to Haley? Okay, no one wants to say anything. This one's difficult because someone has shown resistance and that they've had a negative reaction, and that can be a little bit shocking to you. But I think that in this area, it's super important that we check ourselves. I think we should have not approached Haley and said, this is what I do, but we should have done it differently. But there's nothing you can do about that now. So what we can say is, hey Haley, hey Kaylee, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have given off my opinions like that. I just want to make sure that you're okay and I'm here for you. And just by stepping back a little bit and realizing that you came off in the wrong is wonderful. It can be a little bit difficult to do, but it's super important. And then we can hear her out and see what her story is and see what's been bothering her lately. Lastly, one more scenario. We have our friend Luke. Luke was seeking therapy because he was experiencing some negative mental health symptoms. And he was going to therapy for a while and he was doing a lot better. But now you've noticed that Luke is starting to act a little bit differently and he's starting to isolate himself again. Now, what would you guys do to say to Luke to, say what you've seen and also connect him to help? Give you guys about a minute to do that as well with your group. Okay, so what did you guys say to Luke? Okay, hey Luke, I noticed you've been different. Great. Okay, anyone else? How's it going? Yeah, a simple sentence is super easy. You can just say, hey Luke, how's your therapy going? To bring him back to show that he does have social connections and social supports with him, and also this community support that he has. And you know what, Luke might say, I'm not vibing with my counselor, dude. I'm not getting along with her, and it's just a little bit not right. And that's okay. And you can help connect Luke to proper supports. And if you feel like you are not that person, that is okay. Super important to check yourself throughout all these scenarios. Sorry. And we can get with Luke and look at all these different supports we have, maybe connect him with our high school counselor instead, or call a helpline or something to make him feel a little bit better. So those were great. Give your guys a pat on the back. Little pat on the back. It can be super hard to identify to someone when you've noticed something is different. And so by using these scenarios, giving you guys a little bit of tools and a way to jumpstart things. So, is my thing on? Great. So, we've talked about how to reach out to people, and we know how to do that. But sometimes it's difficult to connect them to help after because we have a hard time identifying where the help is. So, who can we connect our friends to? Or who can we reach out to help to when we need it? So, we can reach out to a trusted adult or friend. This can be a close family friend, this can be you, or this can be like a teacher that you can go and reach out to. There's also elders and community leaders. There might be someone in the community who is very outspoken about mental health, or very outspoken just about the importance of friends and family. There's also a counseling center. Here at your high school, you have Mrs. Jones, who is a great resource, and you can always go talk to her if you need it. We also have family doctors. You can call the clinic and connect with your family doctor and talk to them about it as well. Anonymous helplines like Kids Help Phone and the Northwest Territories Helpline are anonymous helplines that you can call. They're toll-free, and if you feel like you're struggling or stressed, you can give them a call. Here in Yellowknife, we have the Youth Side Door program. We have the Tree of Peace Friendship Center, which focuses on holistic, whole body health. And then there's also the Yellowknife Adult and Mental Health Services Community Center. And you don't have to be an adult despite the title. You can just give them a call, self-refer, and they will connect you with a mental health support counselor, psychologist, psychiatrist, someone they feel is appropriate. So you have all these resources that you can connect people to. You can also connect them for yourself. It's super important that we check in with ourselves to make sure that we're okay. Self-awareness, self-care, and connecting to help when we need it as well is just as important as connecting someone else to help. So, first thing we need to do though is check in with ourselves. Become a bit more self-aware of ourselves. By doing a self-awareness check, we're just figuring out where on the spectrum we are and what self-care activities we need to do to get ourselves back up. The second part is doing what you need to do. Do those self-care activities. And lastly, seeking help when you need it. This is the most important step if you are really struggling. And it might not be easy to do, and the support you reach out to first might not work, but it's so important to make sure that you keep trying and you keep on keeping on, okay? So I want you guys to be able to know how to do this self-awareness check though. So the first thing you need to ask yourself, what does feeling unwell look like for me? I know for me personally, it's when I'm not going to the gym as much and I'm starting to feel tired and lazy. And that can be different for everyone. I want you guys to think for about 30 seconds of what feeling unwell looks like for you. Okay, so does anyone want to share their answers? Okay, you don't go to hockey practice. Perfect, that's a great example. Anyone else? You're also tired. Yes, these are little ways that we can realize to ourselves, and they can be little red flags like, hey, you know what? I'm not feeling that well. Now, I want you guys to think of what sorts of things fill you back up. And these are your self-care activities. These can be things like physical things, exercising, running, playing hockey. Artistic outlets are great as well. Dance, painting. Organizational habits are great to do as well. Having to-do lists, having agendas. I know for me that works really well. Social supports like your friends and your family are super important. And also just having healthy routines. Making sure that you're going to bed at the right time and eating well and taking care of your body. So, thinking of those things, I want you guys to think of self-care activities that you do that fill you back. Okay, so what kind of things did you guys think about? Okay, you like to paint. Awesome. I'm sure you're a great painter. I'd love to see your painting sometimes. Okay, anyone else? A bubble bath? Yeah, perfect. Little self-care activities that you could do. And it's perfectly fine for them to fluctuate throughout your life. The self-care activities may not stay the same, and what works today may not work tomorrow. But that's okay, and it's important to remind yourself that things will change, and you just need to find something else that'll work for you. And the last one, who can you talk to if you're struggling? If you realize that you're struggling and that you're possibly not doing that well, who's someone you can talk to? I want you guys to think about this for a minute. Okay, so I'm not going to make you guys share that one because that's a little bit more personal, but that can be things like your mom, your dad, a really close friend, Mrs. Jones, someone that you can realize as a support person and that you can connect yourself with. So we've talked about a lot today. We just recently, about a second ago, talked about how to be there for yourself. And so I want to challenge you guys to do a self-awareness check sometime soon. You've already partially done one just now. I'd like you guys to do a full one in a few weeks or maybe tomorrow or when you get home, just to do a check and figure out where you are on the spectrum and what you need to do. So that is asking yourself, what does it look like when I'm feeling unwell? What sorts of self-care activities fill me back up? And who can I connect to if I'm struggling? We also spent a lot of this time talking about how we can be there for each other. And that's by using those 5 golden rules. So the first one is say what you see, show you care, hear them out, check yourself, and connect them to help. Perfect. So you guys seem to know these pretty well. And remember, like I said, it's important that you don't have to do them in order. The most important thing is that you show someone that you care about them. And you can use these golden rules just to help guide you a little bit along the way. We've talked a lot about mental health today, and there's a great movement going on to end the stigma and end the silence around mental health. You can do this in your school community, in your town, your city, on social media, or even lobbying the government to include youth in policy and programs. And so Jack.org is a movement that you can join to do that as well. We have lots of great programs that you can access, like the Jack Talks. You do need to be 18 years or older. I know you guys are high school students, but when you're 18, and if you think you want to do the Jack Talks program, you can reach out, go on our website and look at the Talks program and do an application. The program is super, super, super supportive, and there are great people there that help you. And then you get to deliver awesome talks like this. We also have our Summits program. We have national and regional summits across every province and territory that gather young people together. The national summit happens once a year, but regional summits can happen around here, and we've actually had one in Yellowknife already. So look into those if that's something you would like. We also have our Awesome Chapters program. You guys have a chapter right here in your own high school, and Mrs. Jones is your guys' teacher lead for that. So chapters are groups of young people that gather together to end the silence around mental health, and they do this by breaking and identifying barriers in your school community and in your city and town. And they do a lot of great work, and often our chapters are the ones that have the biggest impact on society and on our community. They're often just groups of young people, 5, 10, 11, 12, that come together with the teacher support and support from Jack.org to make noise and change the movement. We often, as young people, are the ones that make the change. We have groups like Jack.org that focus on youth leadership. And in the past, lots of young leaders have been the ones that have made change and lobbied the government and made awareness around programs and services that need it. And this video just talks about the importance of youth and how they're doing this. Okay. That video always gets me super pumped, and it makes me realize that the work that we're doing here with Jack.org is so awesome and so powerful, and that youth are great, and we do a lot of awesome things. So if that's something that you seem interested in and you're really ramped up and really want to get in the movement, I'll stick around for a little bit after this presentation, or I have these little awesome cards that you can fill out with your information and how you would like to get involved. We'll bring them back to Jack.org. Someone will connect with you and talk with you. There's also your chapter here on the high school. You can talk to Mrs. Jones about that. I'd like to thank you guys so much for participating in this Jack Talk. You guys have been an awesome audience. Give yourself a pat on the back on the other side as well. I'd like to give one last shout out to Mr. Trump for organizing this awesome talk for you guys, and for Mrs. Jones for being a great support system. Let's give them a round of applause, guys, okay? Woo! So, like I said, I'm going to stick around for a little bit after the talk if you guys have any questions or just want to chat. And Mrs. Jones is there as well for you guys as well. Thank you so much. I'm going to give her back the mic.